because I really want to explore this idea of your relationship with people as you discuss these things, which is very uncomfortable for many Americans. I think your interview with Michael Smerconish on CNN really showed that, how uncomfortable it is when you put forward these truths.
Well, I mean, the thing with Michael only became uncomfortable really because he hasn't the faintest idea what he's talking about, and he wants to pretend that he has, but he hasn't done any of the research. All Michael Smerconish has done is to learn the Western propaganda view of whatever it is that might be happening anywhere in the world. He's okay on Israel-Palestine. It may be that he's slightly more balanced, but the thing about the Ukraine and pumping all of these weapons, billions and billions and billions, hundreds of billions, probably by the end of the day, worth of weapons in there, is not being seen by the American people for what it is, which is a way of stealing from the poor and giving to the rich, because it fosters nothing but increased profits for the hate war industry, which is a huge part of the American economy, and it's a huge part of the way that the ruling class steal money from all the ordinary people in America. It's how they steal money from you and put it in their own pocket. It's no surprise that I read some figures the other day that quite a long time ago, since 1978. And this is people who work for the ruling class, not them themselves, like the CEOs in companies. Their earnings have gone up by 1,600% over that period of time, and that working class people, their incomes have gone up by 3% over that amount of time. So it's 0.0000 something a year. And obviously inflation has been 6-7% or whatever it is. So basically they're saying, you motherfuckers are going to work for less and less and less and less. And we are going to make more and more and more and more profits. And we cannot believe that you stand for it. Right. Why don't you rise up? Why don't you elect Matthew Ho to the Senate, so that he can stand up and make some changes and give you a fair crack of the whip, because you don't get it. I listened to the latest Chris Hedges, Noam Chomsky conversation, of it. Blah, 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 fascists taking over the world and blah, blah, blah. And it's all right. We can go, well, yeah, we know. Well, yeah, we do know it, but it's happening. And it's happening here in the United States. This, what is the name of the case that's now coming before the Supreme Court? It's called Moore versus something. Anyway, it's
North Carolina. It's North Carolina. It comes out of North Carolina, where I'm at. Right.
It comes so the case comes from there, but it's going to the Supreme Court. Right. And if they get it to fall the right way, which they will, because they have a 6-3 domination of the Supreme Court. How anybody let that happen, I will never know. What happened at the end of the Obama administration? They just went, oh, we don't really care who's on the Supreme Court. Let's not say anything. Maybe everything will be all right in the end, even if we let that moron Kavanaugh, the sex pervert, onto the Supreme Court. Well, even though he's a Christian fascist who wants to destroy the world because he's looking forward to Armageddon or whatever it is. But that's weird. That you might have extreme right-wing fascist Christians ruling this country for 1,000 years if that law gets passed, because local legislatures will be allowed to gainsay the popular vote and say, no, this is what's going to, at least as I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very dangerous. And it comes out of North Carolina. People who aren't familiar with it, it would allow it's based on this individual state legislators theory, which has been discredited for centuries, particularly since the Civil War, but has with Alito and others in the court, it has that possibility of now being established that the Constitution in its reading gives the state legislatures complete control over the elections. So that means they can do whatever they want in the elections. If the popular vote comes back, they can just ignore the popular vote. They can shut down polling places. They can put up all kinds of restrictions on voting because, according to them, the Constitution gives that power to state legislatures. It's completely inane. It has no bearing. It really is something that is very dangerous. But to your point about what happened, I believe it's because the Democratic Party for decades was afraid to legislate. They pursued marriage equality. They pursued abortion rights. They pursued a whole bunch of things based upon getting the judges to do it rather than having the guts to do it through the legislatures, rather than having the guts to pass legislation in Congress protecting marriage equality. I mean, look at Obama with marriage equality. I mean, he didn't do anything on it. He stood around with Defense of Marriage Act for years and years. And it's only because the Supreme Court with Obergefell, right, in 2015 that we have marriage equality now. And now that's in danger because what you did was rather than legislate it, rather than have the guts to do that, you let the Supreme Court do it. So once you have 3 or 4 of those folks turn over, swap out, now it's gone. Yeah, so I mean, it is. There's like
women's rights,
right?
Gone.
Right. Well, hey, look,
productive rights, gone.
Do you know what most people don't realize is 2 years ago, Virginia passed the Equal Rights Amendment, became the 38th state to do so. Right. So this goes back as long as I've been alive, I think. So right, and the Biden administration is refusing to publish the Equal Rights Amendment. They just won't even take it to court. They won't do anything about it. I mean, where is the guts? But meanwhile, like we were saying, Tony Blinken is traipsing around the world, buying weapons to make sure the last Ukrainian dies fighting the last Russian. I mean, it is. There's but it also goes back to what you touched on about how we in our society are squeezed. The working class has been squeezed dry. The middle class is reaching that point as well because we've got this overhead, right, that we allow. This overhead for healthcare, for education costs, for housing costs. We all just kick it up. I mean, the only industries in this country that you can speak of are the financial industries, the military industries, and the oil and gas industry. I mean, even the agriculture industry, as large as it was, doesn't have the power it once had. And so all that is overhead. And we just keep paying it up, as you said, Roger, just like I don't even know how to describe it. Again, let's not get too inappropriate, right? But why are we letting this happen? Why are we letting these things occur? And I mean, that the fear of that it could get worse. It's going to get worse if we keep doing what we've done because it just worsens. It just worsens.
To answer your question, we are letting it happen because they learned the art of the sell.
Yeah,
it's like, as you will hear me sing in a bit later. We traded in the family farm for snake oil. We bought into the carpetbaggers' lies. You bought the dream. You, American voters, bought the dream from the snake oil salesmen and carpetbaggers. And some of you still believe it.
Yeah.
That is the really sad thing. Even though you can't make the bill you can't make it. You cannot make the sums work. You need 4 fucking jobs to make enough to be able to rent an apartment and buy groceries for your family. And God forbid that you should ever want to put petrol in the car and drive to the beach, or spend $10 at Coney Island. It's out of the question.
We've got tens of millions of people, right, whose health insurance plan is literally don't get sick because they can't afford it. Even if they have insurance, you can't afford insurance because your deductible is $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a year.
Yeah, but we know all this. But the interesting question is, how do they continue year after year? How is it that Nancy Pelosi and all those other arseholes in the Congress get to swan around and fly to Taiwan and poke eyes in the bloody Chinese leaders, poke sticks in their eyes? Well, what are they thinking of? Do they not understand that there's only 300 million of you? There's lots and lots of people in the world. And did we not all agree in Paris on the 10th of December in 1948 that we should have equal human rights all over the world? And we wrote, well, mainly Eleanor Roosevelt, I've been taught, but wrote 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the United States ignores all of them. all
Well,
the time.
here's a something I learned today. I was looking up some other information, and I came across which are the nations that uh, have the death penalty for homosexuality. Well, there's 11 of them. Well, which ones are they? And well, sure enough, 8 of those 11 have U.S. military bases in them or buy American weapons. 8 of 11 nations that will kill people because they're gay have American military bases or have those weapons or have American military weapons. We sell them to them. The 3, Roger, that don't fall in that category: Iran, Afghanistan, and Yemen. So Iran, a nation we're destroying with sanctions; Afghanistan, a nation that we're starving to death; and Yemen, of course, a nation that we are just, contributing everything we can to that genocide, right? But that's the reality. And your point about these people, Pelosi, Blinken, Jake Sullivan, all those Republicans, they're access traders. Their job is transactional. That's their job. Their job is to ensure access, to provide transactions, to make everything go along so that everyone can get along, so that the profits keep going, the money keeps going, and we all get squeezed. And then it's such a lust, such a greed, right? That if you have to push it to nuclear Armageddon, if we have to push it to the point where we have with Ukraine in order to make sure our weapons sales continue, what's one of the things I think people should realize about the war in Ukraine, it's much larger than Ukraine. Of course, say the Nord Stream pipeline's getting blown up, right? Look at the right. Look at the export of American liquid natural gas over the last year, right? But also too, all these nations are now buying F-35s. Poland's buying F-35s. The Dutch are buying F-35s. They're all buying all these things. It is a racket, and it's meant to make sure the profits, the money keeps rolling.